Support WrestleTalk!
Give us a subscribe.
What would a Jericho WWE return look like? I am Luco and that is Pete. This, for a 1 week only appearance, is Oliver Davis. We are 2/3 of the Blackpool Content Club plus Oliver Davis, which means, Ollie, you get to be an honorary member
You're
of
like
the Blackpool.
Claudio.
Well, I was going to say he's more the Wheeler Yuta of the group. If I'm Regal, Tempest is Moxley because he's the champion.
Wait, why are you Regal again?
Because I'm the elder statesman of the group.
Okay.
Why aren't I like Eddie Kingston?
Because you're not part of the Combat Club.
I think me. Yeah,
you're
Eddie's
Jason.
Kingston.
but neither's
That's the point,
Kingston.
right?
But they're mates.
But you want to be part of the Content Club. That's what you said
No,
to me
I-
before you came in. Is you were like, I'm using this as my audition because I want to be part of your cool group.
I said if you name it anything else, maybe I'll consider it.
Yeah.
But I still maintain this is a terrible name.
So, okay, in which case then yes, I suppose Kingston makes the most sense for you.
I'm pretty sure though that in order to be initiated into this, we have the same kind of rules. So you need to bleed before you come in. So if you could just.
No, we need to find out what the content version of bleeding is in a match.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? You need to chat with us.
The confession video. I have to do some form of apology screenshotted statement on Twitter.
Yes.
Love
Perfect.
it. But yeah, this is the WrestleTalk Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Oh, was that you doing a
It's
chop?
a bit of just,
Legit
you
bit
know,
of chop.
I think this is when Bryan Danielson and William Regal and John Moxley all hang out. It's just a bit of violence. bit of violence.
Violence.
A bit of- and they say it as they do as well. Bit of violence.
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 Violence. Well, that's going on.
This is going to end with a mic getting
I was going to say
broken.
that's going on the the other context Twitter feed. Just violence.
Fight forever. Violence.
But speaking of AEW, that is our subject for this week. We are recording
Great
this
segue,
on
Lee.
the Wednesday. Thank you. So I'm a pro. That's why I'm the seasoned veteran here. That's why I'm the William Regal.
Clearly.
We're recording this before the Punk Moxley showdown that's going to be happening. Which is, do you want to give predictions for it? I'm predicting Tony Nese causes a DQ.
Oh,
Oh,
amazing.
yeah.
Great. Punk.
Yeah, I
Winning.
think Punk.
Yeah, with a full heel turn.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But anyway,
That'd be
we're recording this on a Wednesday, but what we are going to be talking about is more the news that Fightful had last week, which is that with Triple H now in charge and Triple H looking to rehire some of those former NXT stars that were released during the pandemic, he's also had, I'm not going to say he has had, but WWE reached out to a notable AEW star just to sort of like, just have a chat with them, just be like a hey, how long you got left on your contract? Would you consider coming back to WWE? Now, Sean in his report said, it's a notable name. I've confirmed the claim with the person. They said they did get the phone call. They passed on to their representation and then snitched to AEW that WWE had called them like the big narc that they are. Snitches, was it? Snitches get stitches. That's what I was after.
Well, it was kind of like
Blabbers get stabbers.
I imagine how it went was, I'm really happy working here, but other people are interested in me. But I told them to go away.
Yeah.
For now.
For now. Having said that, this is when my contract is coming up. Impact are also interested.
Of course they are. I don't know. Look, I love Impact. I think they're a great promotion. But why do they keep getting written about as a potential place for people like Bray
I was gonna
Wyatt?
say, Bray Wyatt was going to go there. Johnny Gargano was going to go there before WWE snatched him up.
It's always 4 months after those reports. Someone says, Impact, quote, Impact was never really a serious consideration.
Yeah.
I've read that so
Every
many
time.
times, it might as well be the new Vince McMahon is high on someone.
It happens every time.
So, but then we had this tweet from Jericho. So I'm going to throw to you here because you did the WrestleTalk news about this, because there was the contract, like the conversation around like wrestling Twitter being like, is this contract tampering? Which as far as I'm aware, it wasn't, because they weren't starting negotiations with them. It was just a conversation. However, Jericho...
Someone was tweeting, like a fan, they said, oh man, WWE really missed the boat on Jericho and Kevin Owens at WrestleMania 33.
They sure did.
Which they did. Yes, they are correct.
Like, maybe it shouldn't have been the main event, but it should have definitely have been for the title. And then Jericho responded to that saying, I agree. You know, no surprise there. But then someone in those replies said, you should form a stable with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Make it happen, Y2J. And Jericho quote retweeted that reply saying, so, well, can you get the actual word?
I've got the wording here for you. I've got this from WrestleTalk.com.
What website?
That just says, well, some higher-ups want that to happen sooner than later. #tampering.
So Jericho's done this a few times before when something's come out and the week after he has alluded a confirmation statement to it. The one I remember was when people kept on saying there's a mole in AEW during the pandemic tapings, and then he came out and said it on a podcast.
It's that guy.
It's him.
By the way, it's this guy right here.
So Jericho does have previous for this, and he's not confirming anything. He's not mentioned WWE, but it.
I mean, he sort of has.
Pretty clear,
Sort of
though,
has
isn't it?
said that it is WWE.
Yeah.
I don't. The only way he could say it more was to explicitly say WWE.
Tag them in it.
It's just missing at WWE at the end of the tweet. And
Yeah.
that would have been it, yeah.
And at Paul Levesque. But the idea that a lot of the reporting is this contract tampering or isn't it? Kind of fizzled away. That was last week. This week, Jericho has said #tampering. What else is in that hashtag? Who else is using #tampering?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Oh, that's a great question.
Well, maybe we'll uncover a load of other tampering things.
We've got here someone has that's a
Just a lot of
free
hashtags.
WAPO article.
Oh, great.
Oh,
The league ignored the
Sports.
and adds sports.
Hashtag tampering, yeah.
Tampering with history. The Trump.
Okay.
Get him on the podcast. Tampering. Yeah,
who's
it's not
that?
really-
That's a verified account.
Uh,
But they didn't. Someone replied to it saying tampering.
yeah.
Okay.
So
I
not
thought
a
that
lot.
might have been more fruitful.
Not much happened.
It appears to be a lot of like sport-based things, and that was kind of like when I did the WrestleTalk News episode about this original report that came out, and I said in that news, like, as far as I'm aware, this isn't contract tampering because there were no negotiations in it, and everyone that was written up about it, Sean never mentioned that in his report. No one else who were doing reports from this, including like notable names, the sort of people who would be like, oh man, like if Bix had written about it, he'd be like full on board with that. This is contract tampering, but because I think it was just a chat, it isn't. But that makes me think it's not Jericho then, and it's just Jericho trying to attach himself to a news story to make himself feel like it is him.
It's 100% possible.
Yeah, 100%. Because that's the thing. Jericho is well known for just creating hype about everything, even if it just like never pays off. He'll just tweet about stuff all the time to be like interesting, and he wants to be the protagonist of Twitter. So he always just tries to tweet something that gets him kind of like in the spotlight again, because that's where he likes to be.
He's a wizard.
He's a wizard. That's
Fireball.
That's
A
what he
Twitter
do.
wizard.
Yeah. A what?
A Twitter wizard.
A twizzard.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Got it. So this wouldn't be out of the question if he's just kind of saying stuff, especially because I feel like that stable that the person mentioned of Jericho, Zayn, and Owens is probably something that people would like to see if he did go back to WWE. So I think that if he says, yeah, totally, that's what people wanted from the thing, and people would go, yeah, that's real. I could see that happening, that someone called him about that specific stable that I mentioned. So it's totally possible that Jericho could just be tweeting absolute nonsense.
It's certainly it's both vague because he doesn't clear, like, if you're going to say that much, just say the thing. But it's also it is weirdly vague in that it can play into, you could just go like, well, I didn't know. One of the interesting things that I always thought about when the story first broke was I referred them to my representation. That's not a done thing in wrestling. Wrestlers, well, at least as of a couple of years ago, they do not have agents. It's kind of not a done thing amongst the boys. If you get an agent, you're like, well, who's this mark for themselves?
Yeah.
And it's reserved for the Goldbergs and the Lesners and Jericho. I can't remember the name of the guy, but he's always been like those top bunch of blokes.
There's like a guy that represents like a group of wrestlers, and I think like Jericho's one of those guys that
he is,
got more people to sign on with him as representation.
It's a smart idea.
Yeah.
Like that they should. This is like why wrestlers sometimes their own worst enemies. They won't unionize. Nor will they don't want any possible reason for them to have someone fight their corner in a business sense.
It's because they're the tough guys.
Yeah. Maybe it comes back down to that, or maybe it's just WWE had a monopoly for so long, and WWE would not deal with agents unless you're Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, Chris Jericho, The Rock, John Cena, all the top guys. But if you're a Ricochet and you come in and say, oh, you have to go through my agent, maybe he does have one. WWE will be like, no, you're fired. I'm not using you.
Yeah.
So when it said representation, I immediately thought, well, it's not Adam Cole.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have thought it was Cole, because Cole's only just recently signed. Like, if I think of a notable name, it would have had to be someone who, because like the report was, they knew they were under contract. They knew they were under a full-time contract and signed with AEW. But I think also, if you were putting out feelers to someone in AEW to be like, are you considering coming back here? You'd be calling people whose contracts aren't that new. Like, Cole only signed his last year. Danielson would have only signed his last year.
I mean, I know Vince is gone, but it's WWE. Triple H, the NXT under Triple H's reign 5-6 years ago had a suit put against them by Ring of Honor for contract tampering. That's what delayed Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish joining Adam Cole for so long.
I mean, aren't they still in a thing with MLW?
Yeah,
for contract tampering?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
So like that.
And when I read the original report, the idea, like it was said, there is no way this WWE representative would not have known that this person was under contract for a while. But the excuse maybe as to why it isn't contract tampering is, I don't know. I'm putting a feeler out. Hey, champ, when's your contract due?
Call him Punk.
Yeah. Well, no,
Let's call him Punk.
I call most people champ.
I'll be honest. If it was Punk would have just gone on Twitter and be like, oh, by the way, WWE want me back.
At
weird
WWE, at Triple H, piss off.
He's probably blocked by them, or he's definitely blocked them at the very least.
But yeah, it's certainly it's intriguing.
Yeah. So Jericho, I just had a quick check. Jericho's contract, according to Fightful, ends at the end of 2023. So that's the end of next year, which adds up because he would have signed in 2019.
January 2019. He's an OG guy. That I believe that's from an interview he did with Alex McCarthy back in April. And yeah, Jericho said, I've got a year and a half left. So you do the maths. 5-year dip. 4-year deal?
Yeah, 4 year.
So probably a 2019, 2020, 2021, 2020. Hot damn. It's 5 years.
Yeah, because it's the start of 2019.
Yes.
So it's all of 2019.
So I think that's most of those early contracts were 2-3 years, and then people have signed extensions.
Yes.
So maybe he signed an extension last year or end of last year.
So
to go through 2023.
Only other contracts that we've got here from AEW are, I mean, it could be Brian Cage. His ends on in February 2023.
ROH's own.
MJF is 2024. Andrade is the summer of 2024. Danielson is summer of 24. Miro is early 26. Kyle O'Reilly is early 26. Adam Cole is until 2027.
Jesus.
As is Malachi Black.
So that's a 5-year deal that... 6?
He signed a 6-year deal. Probably signed like a 1-year deal and then signed an extension.
And then signed an extension.
Yeah.
A 5-year extension.
Yeah.
Maybe. Jesus.
I mean, it must be for a lot of money.
I hope he's happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, not in this. I wouldn't have done that in this climate. You want to sign short contracts as possible, so you can just keep renegotiating, playing both sides off each other.
But you might not have known. I mean, that like if you'd have signed it before Vince had stepped down and the whole Triple H regime table, like I think with the benefit of hindsight, you could play that. But I think if you're an Adam Cole, and by the way, like I'm not one of those people that was on Twitter after the Johnny Gargano return being like, whoa, I bet you Adam Cole feels like a right muppet now. He signed with AEW. He had a terrible time over there.
Getting beaten by Orange Cassidy.
Having a terrible main event run that he's having over at AEW. What an absolute hanging out with his best friends and his girlfriend. What a terrible decision to make.
Yeah, I did tweet that. Yeah, I did.
Because I think he's probably having a wonderful time over there. But like, I think he loves Triple H, loves Shawn. He always feels very loyal to them. When his contract comes up, I would imagine he would have to make that choice as to do I stay here or do I go to WWE? But that's because it's such a long-term deal. I don't think it's Cole. Unless we are going to get into situations where people are asking for releases from their contracts and trying to get out of them. But although,
like Cody.
Yeah, well, no, Cody's contract just ended.
Yeah, he just didn't resign.
He just didn't resign.
Oh, yeah, and he was on a sort of
Yeah, it was on a
handshake agreement,
Yeah.
and they just couldn't come to. So, do you remember when people thought that was a work?
Yeah.
I was like, this is just a way for him to get out of that world title stipulation that he's not allowed to challenge for the belt anymore.
Don't rule it out, brother.
Dean Ambrose, it's all a work, mate. and what a work, by the way. It's still going with it.
When you look at AEW's roster, though, I'm just trying to look at this.
Do you want me to do that now?
No, it's too big. We'll be there forever. If I'm trying to look at this from, I'm a competitor to AEW. I want to target their most impactful guys. I'm not going to go for Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks.
Oh,
because you want the most mainstream. If I'm just going it from a WWE idea, you want Cody, you want Chris Jericho, you want CM Punk, you want Bryan Danielson. Those, I can't think of anyone bigger from a mainstream perspective.
Jon Moxley, just from his history of being Dean Ambrose.
I totally agree, but I would actually put him one below the other guys.
I actually went with Pete. I'd probably put Moxley in there. I think particularly for a WWE, because you can reunite the Shield and do runs with them. So there's probably a lot of money to be made having a Shield reunion on the back in WWE. So I for that reason only, not that I think he'll ever be pushed as a top guy in WWE, but I think certainly as a Shield act, I would say that puts him into the top echelon of names that they would want back.
So you got 5 guys there. Can you think of anyone else you'd put?
I would add Omega and the Bucks to it, if only because they're also EVPs. And it's sort of like that. You're right, it doesn't have that mainstream, surprise elements to it. Because I think Cody has got the cachet of he used to wrestle for WWE, whereas Kenny and the Bucks may not have that cachet with the WWE audience. But sort of as an internal thing, getting across more of the EVPs, the founders of the company, to sign with you instead, I think is a real not it's not Shane Douglas, but just but I just think that that's a massive shot in the arm, a real kick in the nads for All Elite Wrestling.
Yeah, 100% is. I can't think of any other people that WWE would want more. I think I can think of people that might be more damaging to AEW, but not that would benefit WWE more, because I don't think those are the same thing.
I think you're dealing with a war of perception. Of course, long term, your Adam Coles, your Hangman Pages, they're going to be the best people for WWE to get, and you build them up. They've got decades left on their career. But if you're just going for the perception, I think because Jericho was the main thing in AEW year one. I bet a lot of people who just got back into wrestling weren't aware of Omega, weren't aware of the Bucks. You hear it all the time. Oh, Jericho's doing a new thing. I'll watch what this is. And he was the big main star for the first year and a half.
First champion they had for that reason, because he had that name value to him. From a sort of personal anecdote, my brother came into the room while I was watching some AEW when he was staying with me recently, and he was like, "Oh, Jericho." It was my brother doesn't watch wrestling, but he did catch it back in the day, sort of that 2000, 2001 era when everyone was watching it. And he was like, "Oh, is he still doing this? Is he still going?" I said, "Yeah." And then Matt Hardy showed up later and he was like, "Bloody hell." So I think that he's got that name appeal. And again, that feels like a real, a kick in the nads for AEW, their first ever champion, a guy that they really did build the company around in that first year. And he's gone back to WWE. And also, Jericho's a smart guy. If his contract is going to be up next year, he is going to be playing both sides off against each other, because I'd imagine Tony Khan is going to be doing everything he can to keep Jericho in AEW.
And it's the right thing to do from your own standpoint, particularly now that Vince has gone. Before, I would just say, don't bother. But now, where you could have an argument that you'll be creatively fulfilled. And one of the things that seemed to push Jericho and WWE apart was, because he was doing the New Japan stuff, and he would come back to WWE, that Raw appearance. But it was Triple H, pulling NXT's involvement for his Jericho cruise.
Yep.
And that always seems to be the start of a larger fissure. And he was like, well, you know what? Maybe I'm not as loyal to Vince McMahon and WWE in North America as I thought I was. And that led to him going to AEW. Whereas if Triple H is like, hey, you can have the whole WWE roster in NXT, and NXT Europe
Mm-hmm.
on a boat.
I would almost argue that Jericho going back to WWE was more likely when Vince was in charge than with Triple H in charge. Only because I think their relationship is probably frostier. Because I think he was loyal to Vince.
Yeah.
Like his whole deal was like, I would never wrestle in North America because I'm loyal to Vince.
Yeah.
So loyal, he then wrestled in North America and signed with the competition. But sort of like, I think that he's always had a bit of
TNA though.
Oh, he did say that Impact did offer him a lot of money and he was going to do it.
It was never a serious consideration.
But I think that the relationship between Jericho and Triple H is probably frostier than Jericho and Vince. And I mean that's been the case for like decades and stuff, because Jericho has said that Triple H was one of the guys who'd be like, oh, I'm not sure about this guy, pal. Like, I don't think he's one of the guys that we can really push the top guy. He's a WCW worker. They're too stiff, brother. So I think maybe it is more likely under Vince than it is Triple H.
I think that you're right, but I still think that Jericho will play both sides as if he's going to go back to WWE. And I think he can quite easily make the argument that, because that was one of the things that he really liked about doing the New Japan stuff, was he got to be more creative. And he, like he mentioned on some of his Talk is Jericho stuff, of him realizing, doing the New Japan stuff, and being like, oh my god, this is what being creatively fulfilled is like. I want to do more of this. And that was what led him, along with the rift from Triple H putting the NXT guys from the cruise, as to him being like, maybe I do want to do more wrestling in North America. Maybe I can do more of this, because actually, me doing the stuff that I'm doing in New Japan is what I want to do more. And then he had the outlet of AEW to do that more. So he could make the argument that, well, if I'm going to be creatively fulfilled in WWE, I could do that. I don't think he will, though.
So he'll be 53
Yeah.
by the time that contract expires, and he has a decision to make. Do I go to WWE? Do I stay in AEW? It's probably one of the last proper runs he'll have. I'm just trying to think of it from Jericho's head, because like you said, he likes to be creative, likes to be fulfilled, but he also likes to do new stuff. And I've always admired that about him. Not all of it sticks, but he consistently tries and tries and tries. And eventually, he writes Judas, which is a great song.
It is the one good Fozzy song, you're right.
One good song.
So, what is there to keep him in AEW? Because, let's be honest, we're all a little bit bored of him now. And we're talking in a year and a half's time. He's already won the top title.
Yep.
You know, maybe he could have a tag title run. He's helped elevate people.
I would almost, I think I would say to that, like, it's the same as all of his gimmicks. Not every one of them lands, but eventually he'll have that one that does land. Like, we were all pretty tired of Jericho because, like, I think his 2020 run with Cassidy and things like that, like, it started off really good, but then they ran it for too long. And then all the stuff he did with America Top Team, I think, again, ran too long. But then all of a sudden he got a feud with Kingston. And I sort of reignited, and I was like, oh, wow, Jericho's this. And they had that amazing match at Revolution. And then you had the start of the Jericho Appreciation Society, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, cool, Jericho is really great. And he sort of found that one feud that kind of made people interested in him again. Problem is that he, again, ran that too long. And he got to the point where...
And Eddie lost.
And Eddie kept... they lost it, yeah. And Eddie, I think, is still feuding with them, even though...
Yeah.
I don't know.
Poor Eddie, man.
I know.
He's got a match with Sammy, hasn't he? That's what they're building.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
That'll be his all-out match, yeah. That'll probably be announced on this week's Dynamite All-Out. We're like, yeah, it's probably that. But yeah, I think that all he needs, maybe that 18 months, just that one killer feud that makes you go like, oh man, I hope Jericho sticks around because that can splinter off into this.
I don't know. You've got to look at it as potentially, where does Jericho end his full-time wrestling career? And maybe not even full-time. Maybe this is the point where he starts going a couple of times a year, just runs 2 programs every 12 months. He's done all the stuff in AEW. He can go back to WWE, and there's 6 years of new guys he hasn't had matches with.
It's kind of the argument you were making about Dolph Ziggler. He had his chance to go and reinvent himself somewhere else, but opted to stay in WWE and became incredibly stale. Like, there's always the chance that if Jericho decides to stay in AEW, that he just remains stale. and he doesn't get to have that final great run. But going back to WWE, yeah, there's a whole bunch of guys there.
A WrestleMania pop.
Yeah.
You know, like
the Cody pop we had at this year's Mania.
that'd be huge. Chris Jericho returning to WWE would be huge. Just a fantasy book.
That's what I was going to get onto. If you were to do this,
Yeah, what would you do?
Pete, who's your first feud? If you were having Jericho go back, what are you doing?
Well, you've already said Dolph. The Miz.
Baron Corbin. Like it would just treat him like an NXT call up.
No, Corbin is the guy who retires him.
Clearly. Might be repetitive. Kevin Owens.
You see, he's been there, done that.
I don't know. I feel like there's still something there. It wouldn't be a long program. It could be something like, he comes back a couple weeks before a Mania match or something, and then they just have a very brief thing to be like, we have so much history together, and we never properly got that WrestleMania thing that we wanted. We're going to do it right this time.
Actually, for Jericho as well, like that's a bit of thing for a bit of pill to swallow, is that they weren't the WrestleMania main event when they were told you were going to be the WrestleMania main event. It was going to be for the title, and then they're being second on the card or whatever it was.
Yeah,
maybe in Jericho's mind, it's like, I'll go back, but I want my main event with Owens that we didn't get to do last time.
Now there's no Taker to get in the way.
Well, if his contract expires at the end of 2023. 2024 Rumble return, then and like that's how they convince him back.
Pop.
Hey, we'll give you that, and you will main event WrestleMania for the title.
Yeah.
Who's the champion?
Imagine that just like that countdown.
Unfortunately,
break the walls down, etc.
That's the one. Yeah.
You want to do Judas?
No.
No, if they came back, he's coming out to break the walls down again.
Yeah.
I think break the walls down, but then it goes into Judas.
Break the Judas
You
down.
are cold like December snow.
Just Jericho will be there being like, hey guys, while I was away, I came up with this awesome character called the Painmaker. Like, and I think that's what the fans are really going to want out of me when I make my Rumble return.
That he's done so many, I'm gonna retire now storylines, it feels like, in AEW.
That's what the MJF feud was.
Yeah.
Cycling through all these gimmicks, and like Moxley's like, I want the old Jericho,
the
I want
Lionheart.
Lionheart.
Yeah.
So like the idea, I always fancy booked his final run should be a farewell rock tour of all his gimmicks,
which is now done.
Which is done, yeah.
It's now done.
So I'm sure he has in his head what his final run is, but I certainly can't see it.
Yeah.
Well, you don't think he would go back?
No. I think it's
sorry.
a possibility. I just have no idea the creative for him to go back. Apart from spots.
Yeah, that's
Rumble
it.
return,
That's
Mania event.
Like
dream match. Dream match.
I don't know what the storyline is to connect those.
Yeah.
I was just going through like the list of people on both Raw and SmackDown. Obviously, the first name is AJ Styles, so you reunite the tag team of
Y2AJ.
Y2AJ. Try and sell some of those T-shirts. You've got loads of stock of back in the warehouse.
What was the order? Could you have Jericho in the number 2 entry? No, you'd have AJ in the number 2 entry, and then Jericho would come out at number 3, just running back.
Yeah.
Styles is.
That'd be good. That's fun.
There's Judgment Day, but they probably won't be together by that point, will they? Gargano, like Jericho Gargano. Jericho Ciampa.
Dream match.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's
Yeah,
just a list of opponents who would be fun matches.
And those would be really fun matches.
Yeah.
But like maybe that's what he would basically just go there and do. It's just like, I don't need like the big creative storylines. We'll just go back. I'll do a bunch of dream matches. Because you're right, like he's 53. It looks like he's maybe want to start winding things down now. I'll just go back there, have a bunch of dream matches, do some pay-per-view main events, get some pay-per-view paydays, and then I'll just go to the commentary desk. Because he clearly wants... I
like him on commentary. I know people hate him. I like him.
I'm one of those guys that doesn't like him on commentary. It's just like he needs a volume down button.
He does.
He needs to rein it in a bit.
You don't need to shout every line that you have.
I don't mind his excitement. Do it when stuff is exciting. Not all the time.
Yeah. I find it to be an annoying Pat McAfee.
So Pat McAfee.
I know. Okay,
Hey!
Because Pat is always at 11, and Pat's just like, oh man, like, but can you go down to 9? It's all I'm asking.
Nah,
you.
dial it up.
Whereas-
Dial it up. Get
Absolutely
the air
not.
guitar.
Whereas like Jericho is
You
also
watch SmackDown every week, Ollie.
Every week.
Because it is... It's a lot.
I watch it twice.
It's a lot.
It is
in
every
case I
week.
miss any McAfee lines.
Yeah.
It is.
Lot.
It says a lot about Pat McAfee that there are times when I'm watching him be like, "Oh, just let Cole have a word, will you?" I'm sort of begging for Michael Cole to speak up. I just want to hear Michael Cole do
Hey,
some
Michael
commentary
Cole's
for a
been
while.
pretty good since Vince McMahon's retired. He's been pretty decent on commentary.
He's just been
He
Michael
can
Cole.
He can do things.
Just like, oh, Pat, just
He mentioned
pipe down
El
for a bit, mate."
Generico on SmackDown.
He did. It was really weird.
Different guy.
Threw me through a loop.
If the BT Sport app was better at rewinding, I would
Yeah.
have rewound just so I could double check that he did say El Generico.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it is maybe just a bunch of dream matches. You go to the commentary desk, and you essentially have the Lawler run, and then you can always step out of the commentary desk and step into the ring for like one match or something like that, and just have a really easy run for the rest of your career. Granted, you can also do that in AEW. Have your final match, a retirement match, go behind to the commentary desk, try and replace Taz to do Dynamite, and then
Replace Taz.
well,
Taz
no one
is
can
great.
replace Taz, but like,
Yeah.
you know, Jericho be like, no, I'm better than Taz. And then he just comes out and just be like, hey, well, I'll step into the ring against you, your young buck, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think you are missing the obvious.
Mhm.
Don't need to replace Taz. I'm talking by 2025, a 7-person commentary team
Oh, yeah.
on Dynamite.
Yeah.
Which is that they would have signed so many people.
Mm-hmm.
Paul White's there.
Yeah.
But who would be the 7 people?
Well, no, it would by the end of the decade. Do you remember when WWE pay-per-views would cut to all the announcers?
Yeah.
Now it's the
international
people
ones.
from India.
Yeah, and it'll just be all the English team, and it'll be like that.
That's
I love it.
that's the future of streaming. Is you got the options of which commentators you choose, like which commentary like duo you pick
Yeah.
to listen to it, and you can switch between them and stuff.
Mhm.
But if our 7 team for AEW, you got Shivani, Excalibur, Taz,
No one said Jim Ross.
Jericho,
Jericho,
JR,
Paul White,
Paul
and
White.
JR,
with is 6.
Don Callis.
Uh,
Don
That's good.
Callis is the
Ricky
7th.
Starks. Oh yeah, but Don Callis is awesome. Kevin Kelly.
Kevin Kelly.
He
Oh,
did a
no.
bit.
Chuck in Mark Henry, who doesn't say anything apart from "It's time for the main event" every single week,
and smile.
and then just sits there the entire time.
You know,
That's all he does.
That's all he does.
do you remember before Rampage launched, and Tony Khan would say, "I've had this idea for like a wrestling TV show since I was a kid."
Mm.
I was really excited to see. Okay, well, we're gonna get some new formats. It really is it's an hour long, and Mark Henry says it's time for the main event.
And it's great.
It does work.
It's
yeah.
really good.
Yeah, Rampage, more often than not, is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a totally fine hour of wrestling.
Sure is.
Don't mind it too much. So yeah, okay. So any other dream matches you can think of you'd like Jericho to have? Should he go
Gargano's
back?
a really good shout.
Ciampa.
Ciampa, I think's a good one.
I mean, like this,
Rollins.
they've done it, but I think it would be really charged. Cody.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a fun one.
The promo
With
battles will
extra
be really
context.
fun. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really good. Yeah.
Either they face each other or they make I think Jericho would probably think, well, I'll make a tag team with Cody, and it's the implication, you know.
Mhm.
Never say it,
Yeah.
but they are the
They're
guys.
the AEW.
That's what they're
guys.
doing right now with WWE.
Mm.
See the t-shirt now, it's Cody 2J. We're using the Y from Cody to be the
Oh,
Y.
Good. Yeah.
Mhm.
It doesn't work.
Wouldn't that just be called COD Y2J?
I was gonna say it doesn't work when you say it out loud, but like on a t-shirt looks
Yeah.
great.
Cody
Yeah.
J.
COD EJ.
I've
What
got-
was the one I was going to say when you mentioned the team up? Jericho would do exactly what he's doing now, and he's going to be sports entertainers, but he'd inverse it, so he'd be the professional wrestlers,
Yeah,
and everyone
yeah.
else would be the sports entertainers.
Yeah.
That's quite
Great.
nice.
Yeah.
Because I did find it funny actually when people were suggesting that like Kevin, Sammy, and Jericho should be a faction. Is this kind of like the when Hit Row came back and everyone was just looking at all of the African American wrestlers being like,
Yeah.
who can we put into Hit Row to replace Swerve? It's like, who are all the Canadians? Can we
Yeah,
just all
yeah, yeah.
group them together?
Exactly.
It's all Team Canada.
Yep.
I wouldn't mind them as being a Team Canada heel stable.
That would be fun. But I think that's going backwards. I don't think Jericho does that a lot. I think he'd want to do something fresh and new.
Right.
Speaking
no,
of.
he never goes into factions. You're right.
Well, with new guys. I bet his one condition, is Hager coming with me? I'm not coming to WWE unless I got Jakey to watch my back in Saudi Arabia.
Perfect.
All right, I've got to go.
All right, okay.
Oh, okay, bye.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm going for a cup of tea with Sat Inyangi.
Nice.
Very nice. So thank you very much for joining us for this brief period of time.
No worries, thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
All right, this is going to be great content this week, 'cause we're not editing this out.
Oh, God, look at the sweat.
I don't want to.
Look at the butt sweat.
They can't see it.
Yeah, I'd rather we didn't have that
It's
part
like-
of the content.
it's
I
like-
suppose the question then just does come to, do I want to see it? Like if a Jericho return, like as a sort of as a bit of an unapologetic Jericho mark from back in the day, because I was a huge Jericho mark from back in the day. I've been kind of done with him in AEW, and I now pretty much am trying to like wrestle with my mind here of, am I sick of seeing him in AEW and I want to see him go back to WWE, or have I enjoyed him in AEW enough that I think I want to see him end his run there, particularly as well because he's doing all the New Japan stuff and things like that. Like, is that more exciting for Jericho, or is him going back to WWE actually the more exciting thing?
For Jericho or for the fans? Because I think those are two different questions.
Let's do it for the fans.
For the fans, I think it's more exciting that he goes back to WWE, because I think superficially it's more exciting, isn't it? It's like, oh, person has moved. Wow! And it's like, oh, fresh possibilities of matches and things. So I think the change is superficially more exciting. It's like, someone gets drafted from Raw to SmackDown and you go, oh, different. And that makes it more exciting.
NXT call-ups, etc.
NXT call-ups. Yeah. It's changed, therefore exciting. Because I think Ollie was kind of right in saying that he's done a lot of stuff in AEW now. He's ran back his various gimmicks over the years a few times now. Aside from just constantly changing and doing a new faction with Jericho as the leader, it's not much else really that's going to be that fresh and exciting, I think, for Jericho. Of course, wrestling always changes, and we can always be proven wrong, because there are always people that we think have nothing in them that turn out to be huge stars. There are people that we think are going to be huge stars who turn out to be nothing. There's always stuff that changes that we don't expect in wrestling, but it does feel like there's more possibilities for him in WWE, and riding that history that he has, and especially with the fresh batch of people that Triple H would like to push and Jericho would probably like to put over.
Or at the very least work with.
Or at the very least work with.
What we've seen with Jericho over the last few years is that he likes to attach himself to very popular wrestlers.
And drag them down, yeah.
Because I was going to say in a politer way, because it's a way to almost reinvent himself. The second that Danhausen got hot on Twitter, he was like, okay, well, the main event of my Jericho cruise is I'm tagging with Danhausen, and me and Danhausen will do Danhausen things together. Yeah. When he left WWE, who's the first people he went to? I'm going to the Young Bucks. I'm going to get on being the Elite, because the second I get on being the Elite, I then feel new and relevant again. Mm-hmm. When I go to Wrestle Kingdom, who's the one guy? I'm going Kenny Omega, because he's the hottest guy that's over in Japan that North America absolutely loves. He's a very, very smart businessman.
Absolutely.
People,
I finger on the pulse.
I don't know if people think that I'm talking him down when I say things like that, but I'm really not. I'm actually saying it's a massive praise to the guy to be to have that foresight, because I don't know if a lot of wrestlers do have that foresight.
Absolutely. And with WWE, obviously, we're not going to know by the end of 2023 which company is going to be the hotter promotion right now, because we're going through...
It's WWE at this point. But
WWE right now,
but that's because I'm only basing it on the last 4 weeks of Raw and SmackDown.
Right? We don't know in a year and a half where we're going to be at, but if WWE is still the cool promotion that it is right now, because of all the momentum with Triple H and stuff, then maybe Jericho's just going, well, that's the thing that's hot right now. I'll go attach myself to that, and it's WWE.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's well going to play off the two sides against each other. But I wonder if it's like a Randy Orton style playing them off against each other, where it's I'm pretty sure that Randy Orton knew he was re-signing with WWE when his contract was up, but he was but I'm chatting with these new guys over here. So you had a couple of extra zeros onto this little check that I'm going to sign, and maybe we can come up a deal, knowing full well I'm 100% staying with you because I don't want to risk this just yet. I have no idea what that's going to look like.
No, exactly. And instead of posing next to a picture of the word elite, Jericho will just go next to sport, I guess, or something.
The word entertainment.
The word entertainment, and or entertainer.
I was trying to think. I was looking down the list of AEW stars that they've got on the main roster. Of course, we're looking at this from a 2022 perspective. Bearing in mind, we've got 18 months left on his contract here, so we don't know if any other new names are coming in. But what I kind of wanted to what matches or feuds has Jericho not done in AEW, or actually any feuds that he hasn't returned to. Things like Kenny. You know, they did the Wrestle Kingdom, then they did the match at the first Double or Nothing. Is there mileage in Kenny Jericho 3? I think it would be the third match that they've had.
Is it 2 or... Does it be 3 or 4? Did they have 2 matches in New Japan, or was it just the one?
No, they needed the one match at Wrestle Kingdom.
No, because then he went on to the stuff with Naito, didn't he?
Yeah.
That's right.
So I think that match they had at Double or Nothing was the second one that they did. And I think they are one apiece then, because Kenny won in New Japan, and then Jericho won at Double or Nothing.
Sure.
So... is there something around that? Like, I think that partly for Jericho and Kenny, they probably think there's some mileage that we can get out of that.
Yeah.
It's probably some more stuff he can do with the Young Bucks. Like, I think he's going to be doing Danielson at All Out, we reckon. Like, that was the report from Meltzer a few weeks back. And I think that's because they're going to be doing it with a Daniel Garcia on a pole match to work out who really loves him the most.
Yes, which I would love. And how are they going to figure that out, Luke? How are they going to figure out who loves Daniel Garcia the most? Bit of violence.
A little bit of violence versus a little bit of entertainment.
But I think, though, with that match in particular, the Danielson Jericho one, it might sound like a massive mark at this point, but I think I'd really like that match purely because of NXT, the original NXT, when Daniel Bryan had that match against World Heavyweight Champion Chris Jericho.
Yeah,
and just seeing where they were then.
First WWE match.
Yeah, and then where they are now. I would love for them to play off that history. I don't know if they will, but I
would imagine
love
Jericho definitely certainly would.
You know, even if they just reference it and be like, you know, the last time we faced each other, you were just a rookie kind of thing. It's like, oh, it's the NXT thing.
We've got CM Punk.
Yeah.
Hasn't done that in AEW yet. I don't think they've done that one.
Is he going to call him terrible things again and mention horrible stuff about his family?
I mean, like the feud,
uncomfortable feud.
The feud that they had in WWE, like they were going to go really far with that. Like I think Jericho wrote about it in his book that they wanted to do. Jericho was going to tattoo him in the ring, like it's like permanently ink Punk to be like, this is what I think about you. And I now they're in AEW and they won't have the sort of shackles that they had in WWE. Maybe they want to revisit that joke. It's like, I really wanted to do this in WWE. This is a chance for me to do that if Punk's still on board for it, and we can revisit that. I think there's something around there.
It's possible. I don't know if it would fit necessarily, because I think Jericho...
It depends on what the feud is, I guess.
Yeah, because it sounds weird to say, but I feel like Jericho was more of a dickhead with his WWE character than his AEW one, because AEW one is egotistical.
He was a monster in WWE.
He was
at
like
that
a
point.
Horrible person.
He was a proper nasty
WWE.
heel. Who else have we got here that he hasn't really done anything with? Malachi Black doing something with the House of Black might be fun.
Yeah.
Undisputed Elite, Cole, O'Reilly, and Fish. Sort of like factions on factions. Ricky Starks.
I think he should reform the great tag team Jericho and reunite with Paul White.
I mean, they were a great team, though, weren't they?
Which, by the way, has probably happened on this episode of Dynamite that we've missed in between us recording this and putting it out.
Oh, Paul White turns heel on Dynamite and joins the Jericho Appreciation Society. Like, well, we may have lost Daniel Garcia, but we're playing. No more BS. Paul White comes out. I'd actually Jericho Swerve.
That's fun.
Jericho and Keith Lee.
I'm into.
There's a lot in there that I quite like.
Yeah. There's some fun stuff for him in AEW. It's not that there wouldn't be anything entertaining and it would be completely boring the entire time. I'm just worried that all of his stuff in AEW, I don't want to say it's tainted, that's the wrong word, but I feel like everyone is just a bit jaded on Jericho. I think at the very least, he just needs some time away. He just needs a refresh.
Once that all-out match is over with Danielson, and that really does put to rest the feud between JAS and Blackpool Combat Club, Jericho takes some time off. Like, surely Fozzy have got tours. They were doing tours during the pandemic. Like, surely they're doing it now. Doors are open. Like,
I hope so.
I would love to see, not love to see, because that sounds like, just get off my TV for a bit. But yeah, time away. It's always a good thing. And again, I think he's a smart enough guy to know that and to appreciate that is something that people do need. Goes away for a little bit. Then he can come back and do a handful of feuds before his contracts come to an end. Then start those negotiations with TK, and that's where you go from there. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, I think the problem with Jericho in AEW so far is his feuds have either been the thing with America Top Team, which just was full of like a bit of like homophobia and like sexist like remarks and stuff like that, which didn't work. Like all the stuff he did with Paige Van Zandt, and like, and a lot of it just like it was felt like it was trying to be edgy for the sake of being edgy, but it actually just felt like a couple of 13-year-old boys trying to be cool, and almost felt a bit sad. And you were looking at it being like, oh man, you're dragging Santana and Ortiz down, like and that was a really awful thing. So it's either that side of it, or it's just feuds that are going for too long. His feud with Orange Cassidy went on too long. The feud with Kingston went on for too long. And I'd like to think that when he does do his next one, if he takes some time off, comes back, just do a short program with someone, just to welcome yourself back in.
And I think that would be, if he did go back to WWE, that would be something that would be much more likely, that he'd do a short program with someone, because I think you can condense it, because WWE has a lot more pay-per-views. You can condense programs down into monthly cycles rather than doing a full thing. And for example, if he comes back at the Rumble, while that is a longer program between Rumble and Mania, that is still a relatively short program, because you're coming back at the end of January to have a blow-off match at the start of April. So it's like 2 and a bit months, right? Still relatively short amount of time to build a feud. That, I think, is a good length for a program for Jericho. Or have him come back, after whatever next July's pay-per-view is, and then have him build to SummerSlam. That is a nice short build that I don't know if he'd get if he stays in AEW, and he might overstay his welcome a little bit.
The other benefit, I was just thinking then, if Jericho go back to WWE, and this is all very like hypothetical talk that we've got here, because there's no like real, I think he'll probably end up staying in AEW, if I'm being honest. But if he did go, it actually opens up the door for a lot of talent that aren't getting themselves on TV, because like Jericho is featured on TV a lot.
A lot.
So like he's always in prominent feuds. He's always on pay-per-view cards. With Jericho gone, like WWE may be able to tout it as this big success. We took away one of their top guys, but actually for AEW, all of a sudden there's this hole in the company now that needs to be filled, and it could be filled by like loads of guys that could easily step into that Jericho position that would, overall, from a fan perspective at the very least, maybe not from a business perspective, but from a fan perspective, open up a lot of opportunities for people.
Especially, I think in the long term, that would benefit AEW. Because one of the things is they have a really, really bloated roster right now.
Oh, dude, we say that a lot. Go on their Wikipedia page. You're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and all of the contracted talent that AEW have. Like, and then you suddenly realize, oh wow, it's busy.
Yeah, like there isn't enough time to have talent featured all the time. And one of the talents that is featured all the time is Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
So if they take that away, that's a lot of time to free up for someone else. I feel like they need to trim down the roster a little bit and actually feature the people that they have. Because I think I've mentioned this on a podcast before. It's probably controversial. I don't really like the way AEW tells stories. It takes too long to get to what they're trying to say. And I know people say, well, actually, what you want is long-term storytelling, and now you're telling me you don't like long-term storytelling. There's a difference, though. For this one, it's not that the stories don't actually take that long to tell. It's just that they don't tell them. They have like a 3-week break, and then they go, do you remember a month ago when we last did this story? Here's the next beat of it. If you just did that every week and told the story over a long time, but with progression every week, that is long-term storytelling, not a story that takes a long time to tell.
I was going to say this. Well, we always say on this channel, there's a difference between long-term storytelling. Like Julia Hart joining the House of Black was not a long-term story.
Short-term story.
It was a short-term story that took months to tell.
Yeah.
It kind of like, WWE thing, the Sonya Deville Naomi thing was not a long-term story. It was a story that took a long time to tell.
Yeah.
And there is
and that is debatable that they actually told a story.
They had the payoff in Saudi Arabia. She tagged with Ronda Rousey against Sonya Deville.
They had 1 week of story that they told for 3 months.
Yeah. And then I think Naomi won. And then they won again in Saudi. What more do you want, Pete?
That's a bad story. That's what that is. What I want is a good story, Luke.
I think we're looking at this list of people here. Crikey, there's a lot of them maybe on the cutting room floor once their contracts are up. And, Tony Khan is... Yeah, and people could be like, I can't believe Tony Khan did this. He's new to this.
Yeah.
Like, I think, there's that excitement of just like, all of a sudden, there's 180 people that released by WWE that I could possibly sign. And some of those names, like a large portion of those names are really great. Of course, you're going to want to snap them up. But the second you do that, you're like, uh-oh.
Now I need to use them.
Now I need to use them. Now what do I do? I've only got, you could say 3 hours of TV, but effectively it's 2 hours of TV and then Rampage, which that's for the Truth Busters.
You do have 3 hours you use it properly.
That's for the Truth Busters.
It's not, though. It shouldn't be.
So, I think we're looking at...
Trust Busters, also.
Sorry, what did I... Oh,
Truth Busters.
Truth Busters.
Myth Busters, yeah.
That's what I'm getting confused with. So what it is because every time I see them, I just see Ghostbusters. I just see the word Ghostbusters on screen, and I'm like, well, now I want to root for them.
Parker Boudreaux is my guy.
Oh, yeah,
Clearly.
he's the race stance of the group, if ever there was one.
Amazing.
There's pretty a lot of guys that are looking, when their contracts are coming up, being like, oh, I don't know whether I am going to get re-signed here. A Marco Stunt was a great example. A Joey Janela was another example of guys that were just like, they were OGs there, and then they've gone. Conan talked about this on Keeping It 100, a podcast that often has utter dickheads on it. Got no beef with Conan, but I've got beef with some of the other pricks that he puts on there, where he was talking about how there were AEW talent that were approaching when he was backstage who were like OGs with the company, saying that they were pretty pissed off that they weren't getting on TV at this point.
Yeah, and it's kind of understandable. It's really hard because you want to reward loyalty for the company. You want the people who've been there since the start to feel valued, that they brought something to AEW. You want to protect those people because they've helped build the company from the ground up. But also, if you've got these huge names like Adam Cole, Keith Lee, Swerve Strickland, CM Punk, all these guys that are coming into the company, Bryan Danielson, you got to use them. They're huge names.
That's it. I feel bad for Joey.
Yeah.
But if I've got a choice between putting Joey Janela on TV or CM Punk, I'm probably putting Punk on TV.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to put Bryan Danielson on TV. I'm probably putting Adam Cole on TV. Joey Janela was great for that first era of AEW.
Yeah.
But it's not that AEW anymore. It's a very different company now.
Yeah.
And you've got to be always looking forward. There's always that thing of just you got to respect, and take care of those people. You have effectively taken care of them by giving them the paycheck and having them not firing them and letting them run out the entire length of their contract, paying them regularly and giving them a good wage. I don't think there's anything wrong there, but at the end of it being like, look, this isn't working out for us anymore. We're going in a different direction. Thank you for your service.
And it's not sudden. It's not releasing them.
No.
You're still keeping them under contract until the contract expires, and that's the deal that you came to.
Exactly.
You're with us for 3 years. Okay? After those 3 years, we'll review how you are. And after those 3 years, not needed anymore. Sorry.
Look at the card for Double or Nothing 2019 and compare it to the card for Double or Nothing 2021.
Yeah.
It's a wildly different company. Not even just a little bit. In a handful of years, it's a completely different company. It's actually very similar to the changeover in WWF in the Attitude Era. If you look at the cards they had in 1999 and compare them to the cards they had in the year 2000, 2000 feels like a completely different place because they had an influx of people coming in, not just Jericho in 99, but Benoit, Malenko, Guerrero, and Saturn. And all of a sudden, people like Val Venus and D'Lo Brown aren't getting on the cards anymore because we've got new names that we're putting on the cards. We've got new stars that we are building instead. Companies move forward. WWE pay-per-view cards from 2022 don't look the same as the ones from actually, they more or less do look a lot like the ones from 2016. It's a bad example. From 2010, actually, they do look a lot like those in some cases. They haven't changed that much. But with a Triple H in charge, I think we are going to see big differences.
Yeah.
Triple H's Raw in a year's time is going to look completely different to the Raw that was there now.
Entirely different.
But I don't think there'll be people that will be like, oh, Triple H needs to keep hold of the talent that was there when he first took over.
Exactly.
Because companies need to move forward.
And the thing is, you can build stars because there are some AEW.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You have AEW originals who are now stars in the company, who AEW are keeping and protecting and using properly. Guys like Darby Allin, guys like Jungle Boy, right? Who have been built up, are stars, and are being featured prominently on AEW television and are treated really, really well. So it's not like they're just disregarding everyone that was in their company and just saying, oh, new things, let me have them. It's just, who's the bigger stars?
Things change, man.
Things change.
Things change. People get over, some people don't.
Yeah.
That's the way that the world works.
Yeah. I do think, and I mentioned this on the reactive news episode that went up on Wednesday, was that, I feel like at times AEW can have a bit of a fascination with WWE in that it's a lot of we've got Mark Henry, we've got Paul White, we've got Christian Cage. It's Matt Hardy. It's Jeff Hardy. Remember all these WWE? Look, we got the WWE music. Come on, remember WWE? It's Cole Carter from Tony D'Angelo's group. We're going to make a storyline out of this for some reason. That's weird.
The biggest benefit I can say for the Cole Carter thing is that when Cole Carter was on Dynamite, no one had a blues clue who he was.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, no one really watches 2.0. So they're doing this wild thing. It's like, you keep saying this to me. It's like they've changed the factory. They made them look like, and I was like, I'm not seeing this because I don't know enough of 2.0 to really know that that's what they're doing.
It's just
so if I'm not, this is my job.
Yeah.
So like, is it worth their while doing this sort of thing?
No.
Is it to pop a handful of people?
Like, that's what I mean. I'm like, what are you getting at? Who's popping for this? No one. What are you doing?
QT Marshall is popping for it, I guess.
Weird story that. I don't think it is entirely like WWE all the time. AEW does focus on their own styles and their own building a lot of times. But especially when Cody was there was a lot of like tongue-in-cheek WWE references all the time.
I disagree with you on that though, because that's just their characters. The characters have got history. That history that's tied to WWE. So of course you're going to reference that. If they had history that was tied to Impact, they'd be referencing that.
But they don't though.
What, reference Impact?
Like, it feels like a lot of the history that they pull from is their WWE history and ignore everything else.
Well, that's because that was some of the most famous stuff they did. Like a lot of like Punk stuff, like when he was, the promo he was cutting on Jon Moxley was WWE focused. But that's because these are living, breathing people that have wrestled in other promotions that now, and for me, it fleshes them out even more.
Yeah.
I would actually think it would be a detriment to feuds if Punk and Moxley ignored that they were in WWE together for multiple years.
No, I don't think they should ignore everyone's history and just be like, you have started fresh in AEW because that was what WWE does and it's bad. You obviously have people with history and you should reference the fact that they have pasts, obviously. But to me, sometimes it can feel like a lot of the choices that AEW make in terms of presentation or who they feature or whoever is kind of like, we're not going to say it, but remember WWE? These guys are there. And now they're on our show, which makes our show feel way more important because they used to be on WWE. Do you recognize those faces?
I don't buy that. Like, I don't fully believe that. I'm not saying that you're wrong or anything. It's not an argument I 100% buy into. But then again, like, I don't buy into the ex-WWE guy arguments. Like, Alvarez made this point during the invasion. He wrote about it in The Death of WCW, was that when they signed up a load of guys from WCW, granted they got the jobbers of the Chavo Guerrero, Sean Stasiak, and all Chuck Palumbo and all this, and Booker T and DDP were like the only ones. First thing they did was just put them in WCW t-shirts backstage, and the WWF locker room treated them like they were WCW talent, and that they weren't good enough to be there, and that we shouldn't be putting them over. They're from the other company. And Alvarez's point was like, they're your guys now. Like, you've got the opportunity to make them feel important because you own them.
Yeah.
They're under contract to WWF at this point.
Yeah.
And like, I've got this with, like Danielson. Yes, he worked for WWE, but he's an AEW star now.
Yeah.
He's not an ex-WWE guy. Because like, he's an ex-ROH guy. He's an ex this, that, and the other. Like, you are with the company you are. Like, I don't look at Cody Rhodes and say he's an ex-AEW star. I do on Twitter when I'm mocking things, but like, he's a WWE star now. And I'm not one of those, because like half of WWE's roster are ex-ROH. Yeah. Like, it's, ex-Evolve. So I don't mind that. I'd love for Johnny Gargano and Ciampa and stuff like that to reference stuff they were doing in Evolve, or like the same way they do with NXT. I think it's actually just beneficial to me as a viewer because I think it makes the world feel much larger than it is.
I'm on board with all of that. Just feel like AEW sometimes just focuses a bit too much on WWE. That's it. That's all. Sometimes
a lot of guys came from WWE.
Yeah, they did.
So it's bound to happen.
Yep.
But I think we're going to call it to a close there on this episode of the Blackpool Content Club. Thank you so much for watching. If there are any topics you'd like us to discuss, because it doesn't have to be news-based, just opinion-based things, let us know in the comments down below, because we were always scouring through them to see what you want us to talk about. What did you think of this episode? What do you think would happen if Jericho did go back to WWE? What feuds would you like to see him do? Let us know. But until then, I've been Luke Cohen. That has been Chopper Pete Quinnell. Thank you to Ollie Davis for joining us for a little bit. We have been the Blackpool Content Club. That was the WrestleTalk Podcast. Jam that jam!